Hi, everyone. I'm Judy the YouTube Lawyer with another legal live stream show. Our special guest is a returning guest. He's Raleigh personal injury lawyer Dominique Williams, whom I have known since he was a law school student many years ago. He attended NC Central Law School and has a very successful solo practice now. And we're going to focus today's episode on different legal practice areas and how to get those lawyer jobs. So let's welcome Attorney Williams to the stream. Hi, Dominique.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you for having me.
Sure. Yeah, and it looks like your former classmate Marcus is on right now.
Hey, Marcus.
His YouTube channel is doing really well also. So
Awesome.
yeah, so let's all subscribe to Debt Free Dad if you're not subscribed already for financial information.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, although you're probably already subscribed, right? So would you like to just give a little bit of background information to our viewers about yourself for those people who didn't watch the previous live stream shows?
Yes, so this is my third time being on your show, and I'm so excited to be here again, and hopefully you will have me back in the future.
Sure. Yes, sure. There's a lot to talk about, and you're articulate and you have lots of stories to tell.
Yeah, thank you. Well, again, my name is Dominique Williams, and I grew up in Halifax County, North Carolina, which is out east, like farm country. I attended NC State University, and from there, I went on to attend NC Central School of Law in Durham. I graduated law school in 2009, and I've been practicing primarily in personal injury, and I used to do a lot of criminal defense as well. And now I do personal injury and workers' compensation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So maybe we could start chronologically with what you did during law school in terms of different practice areas. I recall you interned for the Wake County District Attorney's Office, right?
Yes, and that was an amazing experience. And I enjoy seeing the new interns at the DA's office when I am down there. I mean, it's an awesome experience. I got the opportunity to try cases, nothing major, traffic tickets, mostly driving violations, larcenies, and some other low-level crimes. That was an awesome experience. I got the opportunity to put into practice what I learned in law school. And that's always important to do that, because when you graduate law school, you know all the elements of different crimes and different things, but how do you put that into practice? So the DA's office gave me that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for people who are thinking about making that into a career, like, what do you think are the qualities somebody would need to get that type of job or to do well in the district attorney's office?
I think to have an open mind. We often see the DAs, the new DAs out of law school. They go there and, they are a sponge. But one thing I do always tell them is don't burn any bridges, because oftentimes this is not going to be your career job. There are some career DAs, obviously, but typically it is a stepping stone. So I always like to remind them of that, when I'm talking to new DAs, don't burn any bridges. Oftentimes, the defense attorneys who you work with, you may want to work with or for them in the future. And what you see all the time, you see DAs leave the DA's office and go and work for different defense attorneys. I recall one time when it was a relatively new DA in a local county, and she was talking to an attorney who I've met like in Crossing, and she's on TV, a lot of commercials and all these things all the time. And she was talking to the young DA about something, a traffic matter, nothing major. And the DA she seemed to have an attitude. But then when she saw the attorney's name on the shuck or the file, she was like, oh, I see your commercials. And I was like, that's exactly why you don't get an attitude and just be rude with people, because then, you may want to work for that person because she has a pretty big practice. So I always just remind them, be professional, which most of them are, very professional. It is a stressful job. I mean, you have a lot of cases. Typically, they start in district court. It's a lot of cases that come through district court. Typically, in the morning sessions, 100 plus in Wake County and Durham County.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's
You
very
mean,
stressful.
what do you mean, like 100 cases in one courtroom?
Yeah, it can be.
Wow.
It's definitely with typically more than 50 cases. Sometimes it's a very heavy docket. I mean, it could be over 100 defendants in that morning session, that one courtroom. So it is a very stressful job, and I understand that. And some defense attorneys can be unreasonable as well. So it can be very combative in doing district to be a district attorney because you are dealing with defense attorneys who, many of them have been practicing for many, many years, and here you are fresh out of law school, and they can be, I guess, rude as well. So it can be combative.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Wow. So you have to have a really thick skin to be able to put up with some like really arrogant and just unprofessional type people, not to mention the victims or the victims' parents or family.
Yes, yes. So you need to be able to navigate dealing with the victim parents, because often the victim is a minor. You are dealing with the parents. You are dealing with an aggressive defense attorney. Typically many of them have been practicing maybe as long as some of those new DAs have been alive. you know. So yeah, it's a lot to navigate when you enter the DA's office, and that's why the turnover, frankly, is so high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with the office that you're familiar with, do they typically start the new attorneys on traffic cases or what? Like, what's the way things are structured?
Yes, well, in Wake County, which is the county that I used to do primarily, and I did some Durham as well. But yes, and they will start them in traffic court. And in traffic court, you will have more than a couple hundred people in one day in Wake County. The good news is you are not trying cases in traffic court. Typically, is to dispose of cases. You want to try to get rid of as many traffic cases as possible, and that will get you familiar with the court system and different characters, and just how to deal with the public, because dealing with the public can also be rude to you as a DA. When I was with the DA's office, I never forget, because I always tried to be polite no matter how disgruntled the defendant, whoever I was dealing with, was, because again, you can have pretty disgruntled people. I'll never forget, one day I was in Food Lion, and I ran into a guy who I did not recognize, but he recognized me. And that taught me a lesson. I was like, thank God that, my thing is to be nice and polite. He came up to me and he was like, you were the district attorney. He didn't know I was a law student. You were the DA when I was in court a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, I just wanted to thank you because you were so professional and so nice, and I really appreciate that. And I was like, okay, great. I'm so happy that you had a great experience. And that really, yes, because here I'm in Food Lion, right?
Yeah, you're just trying to buy your groceries and get out, and you don't know if this guy is gonna like punch you or curse
Yeah,
you
you
out.
never know. You never know. So I always try to remember that you may run into some of these people outside the DA's office as well, because it is a small county, I guess.
Yeah, it's sort of a big county, but you just never know if you could run into these same people, like when you're running errands or going grocery
Right,
shopping or just minding your own business. Yeah.
right.
So, how competitive is it to get a job in a district attorney's office?
I think it's very competitive. I remember the interview process. So typically they bring in, well, at least in Wake County, they may bring in 3 or 4 DAs or interns per semester. So it's not many they bring in. And I know when I interviewed, there was a lot of people on the list that the DA at the time was interviewing. So it's pretty competitive, I think. So you could, it is a volunteer job, so you are not getting paid for the position. But for me, the experience paid for itself. But it was competitive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so even to be an intern, it was hard to get that position.
Yeah, because you have so many people applying for the position, and in Wake County, they bring in 3 or 4 people.
Mm-hmm. And what about attorneys? Like, do you know roughly how many attorneys they actually have working in the office?
I believe it's about 50 in Wake County, if I'm not mistaken. It's 40 to 50, if I'm not mistaken. I remember watching the Lauren Freeman debate because she's running for re-election. And this was a couple of months ago. And I think she said about 40 or 50 in her office.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's a lot more than I thought. But Wake County definitely has experienced a population boom in the last 10 years. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, well, what about making that as a career? Did you ever think about wanting to get a job in a DA's office since you interned for one?
Honestly, no. Just the experience working there, I was like, I think it's going
Oh,
to be too stressful for me. Because again, it's a lot of cases that come through, and I enjoyed the experience, but I never really considered the job after. I can say this: it is great when you graduate with student loans because it is a public service job. So when you have student loans, you can apply for loan forgiveness after 10 years. They will forgive most, if not all, of your student loans. So that is a great benefit for working for the DA's office or even the public defender's office.
I see. Yeah. And did you ever have any like candid one-on-one talks with the attorneys in the office to ask them how happy they were or what their quality of life was like?
Yeah, because I was under DAs when I worked there. So I had DAs just show me the ropes. And when I tried cases, I had DAs there with me, giving me tips live during the trial. So I had the opportunity to ask them about their experience. And many of them were young DAs, I mean, fresh out of law school.
Oh,
Yeah, I never really got the chance to talk to some of the felony DAs. I mean, honestly, they are very busy in felony court. Um, so I never got the opportunity. Maybe I could have. I don't recall even trying, honestly. I was young and I was talking to the younger DAs, fresh out of law school. And, it was pretty cool dealing with them. Maybe I should have, though.
yeah. Are any of those attorneys still working there? Like 12 years later, since you were interning there, like 13 years later.
Honestly, there is not one DA that I remember that I worked under that's still there. I mean, they
Oh.
all either went to defense work
Mhm.
or they went to like law firms doing civil work.
Mhm.
Now, there are DAs there who are career DAs, some of the felony DAs who were there at the time, and they still are doing felonies, high-level crimes, but none of the district court DAs are still there that I remember.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, but it's a great prestigious stepping stone because, as we know, a lot of people who worked for the DA's office ended up becoming judges or,
Mhm.
going into private practice, making more money.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That too, good point. Many of them went on to be judges.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because it always looks good, especially if they've
Mhm.
had real trial experience, a lot of actual litigation experience.
Mhm.
So, do you have any idea how much the district attorney's offices pay? Like, I assume it starts out low, right? Probably in
It
the 40s or 50s.
Yes, in my opinion, is not enough for the stress and the amount of work, but that's a different topic, I guess. It's
Yeah.
like teachers.
Yeah.
um, from 10 years ago, when I looked at it, when I was in law school, it was 40 something thousand. Maybe they have gone up. I hope they have gone up, but honestly, I don't know. But it's not much. But a major benefit, again, is the student loan forgiveness.
Mhm. Yeah, but for the what's it called? Public service loan forgiveness, you have to work for 10 years,
10
right?
years. 10
Yeah, in
years.
some sort of government or public interest job. Yeah.
Yes,
So I
yes.
don't know. That's a long time to be doing a really stressful job. I don't think I could have lasted more than a couple of years in that type of job either.
I mean, the turnover is high, and many of the local DA's offices, is very high. So for that reason,
Yeah, I see. Okay, so what are some of the other practice areas that you've worked in?
well, of course, I interned with you as well,
Yeah,
and
learned
of
all sorts of
course,
random stuff.
Yes, I mean
Family
it
law.
was awesome, but I also
Employment.
learned that I did not want to do family law.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I remember we would just like sometimes sit and observe some cases going on in the courthouse too.
That was
And
fun, actually. That was a, and I do the same thing when I bring an intern on. I do the same thing you did with me. Take them to the court and just watch cases. I mean, that was great. So I really appreciated that.
yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. But I never forget when I interned with you. I answered your phone, and it was a one of your clients, and she was in a custody dispute,
Mhm.
and she was like, well, her ex, he's supposed to met her at 5 o'clock, and it was like 5:05, and she wanted me to find out from you what she should do. And I was
Oh,
like, I could ask Judy. She's a little bit busy, but maybe you should wait a little bit longer.
yeah. So, yeah, that's the way family law is. I mean, it gets worse than that, though. Where somebody's like calling you at 9 p.m. because the ex and the kid won't come out of the house, and they're just like waiting in the car, honking, wanting the kid to come out because it's his custodial time.
Right.
Or screaming and yelling because there's some emergency order, and the cops or the sheriff came and took the kids away, and somebody's threatening to take the kids out of state.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Yeah. So so you never worked in family law at all?
No, never.
Yeah.
Never. Again, my thing is personal injury can be stressful, but compared to doing criminal, because even when I did criminal law, it could be stressful. I did a lot of public defender work. So they kept me busy with that. It was, again, great experience, but it could be stressful at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of cases did you handle when you did criminal defense?
The cases that were assigned to me were misdemeanors. So I did a lot of DWI cases. I did hundreds of those cases, larcenies, trespass cases, a lot of driving related cases, driving while license revoked. I think that is the number one charge in the state, driving while license revoked. I mean, that charge in itself, I mean, it just kept me so busy.
So what kind of defense can you really build up for clients that are accused of driving with their license revoked? Like, what can you do for them?
Give them a good deal, pretty much. I mean, it's a pretty low level charge or crime for the DA's office to establish. The biggest thing is getting them a good deal. Oftentimes, my client had multiple charges for driving while license revoked. I had times where they had over 10 of that same charge. So you would try to get as many dismissed because people have to work,
Yeah.
even though you may not have a license, you still got to provide. So it's either provide or get pulled over, and people drive.
Yeah, that's right. The bus system around here isn't the greatest. The subway
Exactly.
system. Yeah. So, so you did that kind of stuff. Like, did you do any more serious crimes like robbery or breaking and entering or murder?
No major felonies. I did low level felonies. I think the highest level felony I did was maybe like a G, because you have like different levels, F, G, HG, and going up to like a felony. I think a G was the highest level I did, and that was a felony child abuse case. That was a pretty unfortunate story, but that was the highest case that I remember doing. I tried to stick away from the murders and the rapes and all of those cases, but doing that child abuse case also taught me that I do not want to do those type of cases.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but did you take any of those cases all the way through jury trials, or did most of them just get pled down, or whatever you call it?
Most of them got pled down. I would try. I think I tried more DWI cases than anything else. I mean, I tried probably 100+ DWI cases.
Wow.
Yeah. So also larceny cases. I tried quite a few larceny cases, but mostly DWI cases and different types of motions and DWI cases.
I see. But when you were doing that, As a court-appointed attorney, though, were you limited as to how many hours you could spend on each case?
It's a lot of politics behind that. Initially, they paid us per hour, and then they changed to a contract system where they just pay you a flat amount per month. So if you spent 30 hours in a case, which oftentimes I did, I spent, when I tried a case, because I will always tell my clients, I'm going to treat your case as if you came and paid me out of pocket. So I gave them that same zealous representation. So I would spend all that time on a case, but I just got a flat lump sum check from the IDS.
Oh, that stinks. Yeah, and you don't get paid until it's over, right? Like, it's
Well,
not that you
initially,
get paid
yes.
immediately.
Initially, they paid us per hour, but they stopped that. I started practicing law in 2009, and I think in 2011 or 2012, they went to the contract system. So, and I did that actually maybe a little bit later, maybe 13 or 14, they went to the contract system, which they paid me just a flat fee, no matter how many hours I spent on my cases collectively. And that really sucked because then, I would try these cases and I would feel, oh my goodness, I'm spending all this time, but I still had to give my client the same representation as if he or she paid me.
Yeah, I can imagine it can be tough, especially if the client is tough to deal with or not grateful or gets mad at you for stuff. Like, did you ever have any of those court-appointed clients get mad at you or not cooperate?
Oh, yes, definitely. But, I can say overall, the large majority of them were very appreciative and they really were nice to work with. I must say that. But yeah, I recall one time when I was in Durham cases, it's like a different world. I never forget when I was in Durham and my client, he was in a gang. He was a gang member. And he was a guy who, he was pretty scary, and just looking at him and just dealing with him. And, and I was talking to him, advising him on his case, and he did not like what I was saying. I like to tell my clients, I'm not going to tell you the sky is red when it's blue. I'm going to give you my honest opinion about the facts and your case. So he started walking up to me like he was going to attack me. And I was like, don't let my suit fool you now. Like, let's calm down because I'm going to protect myself. Yeah. So
where were you when that happened? Were you in the jail meeting room?
No, I was in the courthouse. Outside the
you're
courtroom.
in the courthouse.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
then did he calm down?
He did, but in Durham, I would see fights all the time in court. I used to say to my wife that people met up in the Durham courthouse to fight. That happened all the time. It was nothing to see a fight in Durham.
Wow, inside the courthouse? I remember
yes.
hearing about a fight outside the front of the courthouse, but not inside.
Ask Marcus. Ask Marcus. Yeah, he was in there all the time. Yeah.
That's horrible, man. So I can see why you didn't want to do that kind of work after a while. But like, did you ever think about in private practice continuing to do DWIs? Because, couldn't that be potentially pretty lucrative if you become the DWI guy?
Yeah, but again, it can be stressful, and I would spend so much time in court. So I stopped doing criminal defense in 2017, and I just, I finished the cases that I had, and I was like, no more. And I still get calls for DWIs, but it just so much work, and I just prefer, you keep. I guess you hear the theme, too much stress. I try to limit that because mental health is so important. And I try to limit the stress as much as I can. Obviously, the nature of our jobs is stressful by nature, but I try to limit the practice areas that just, in my opinion, just causes so much stress. And DWIs can be also stressful.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and when you say it's too much time in court, it means usually you have to sit around waiting a long time, right?
Yes.
So you don't even get real work done except maybe check some emails.
Yes. You just sit around in court so much, and I would just sit around for hours. I would spend more time sitting there than even doing any work on my case. You got to wait to talk to the DA. You have to wait to be heard by the judge. Your clients often come late, so you waited for your clients. And in Durham, if your client missed calendar call, when I was in Durham, the judge will make us wait until the very end of the court session to determine whether or not he or she is going to grant a continuance. So I would have to sit there from 9 o'clock until maybe 12:01.
That's horrible. What a
some
punishment.
judges would do that in Durham.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to name any names, but some judges would do that. And I'm like, you know, you forgot how it is to practice, because now you're making the attorneys sit here and I will have to sit there for hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like you could just like pull out your laptop and go to a desk in the corner to get some real work done. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I can see why after a while it's not financially feasible to waste so much time on a case where you might be getting paid a flat fee.
Right. And I never forget Judge Fullwood in Wade County. When I first met him, right after I passed the bar, he called me to the bench and he told me, he was like, I'm going to tell you a secret. Do all you can to get out of district court.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so you followed his advice.
And I never forget that. He was like, because this could be a lot of stress. You're going to do a lot of waiting around. I mean, he broke it down to me, you know, pretty honestly, I would say, you're not going to make the money you want to make because of all the time you're going to spend in here. You're going to have a lot of stress, so do all you can to get out of district court.
I see. Okay. So Jose Clamaco is here. He has a question. He says, what are your guys' thoughts on practicing law and automation in the next 10 years? Do you guys see a trend of where similar to practicing family medicine moving to online?
I love the Zooms and the WebEx hearings. And even before COVID, I would say to myself, why can't we do this online? Because WebEx, Zoom was new to me pre-COVID. Where COVID, I learned about Zoom and COVID, but WebEx I knew about. And I recall saying to myself all the time, I could have done this online. I love WebEx hearings, and my clients love it as well. What about you, Judy?
Yeah. I'm actually so happy now to be able to do pretty much all of my initial consultations and even later meetings with retained clients just through Zoom. It's so much easier. And then now we don't have to drive all the way downtown just to do someone's uncontested divorce. They do it all on WebEx on Friday mornings. So it just saves everybody so much time and agony. And of course, we're not spreading germs to each other or polluting the air, driving all the way to downtown Raleigh and hustling to find parking and running to the courthouse, just so you can say, Your Honor, this is my motion for summary judgment divorce, and hand up some papers and then it's over. So, so I do think that it's making things easier. I really hope sometime really soon that we start getting e-filing in the county courthouses here, because it was supposed to start last fall, but then it never materialized. So a lot of times I do still waste all this time and gas just driving all the way to downtown Raleigh to file a few pieces of paper and get the paper back. And, it's like we're still stuck in 1985 or something. So.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, my clients love it. I love it. And I hope they stick to it. I hope they don't revert back to doing things in person once, now that COVID is getting much better.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of like making things more automated, I mean, I don't know when this happened, but at least in North Carolina, they do have a statutory formula for determining child support amounts, which, attorneys are still needed in some cases, and you can still argue to go outside the guidelines, but it definitely makes it a lot easier when you can just plug in people's incomes and it spits out a number as to how much a child support most likely is going to be. But we don't have that for alimony. I don't really see much of a push for people wanting some sort of mathematical formula to calculating alimony or whatever. But, I mean, also, of course, we see these online websites like LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer and stuff, which I think have eaten into the businesses of some attorneys that do estate planning, because there are probably a lot of people that are just kind of lower income that really don't want to have to hire an attorney. And they figure, well, I'm just going to go on this website and create my own simple will or my power of attorney, or they even do some separation agreements. And even on the nccourts.org website, you can now use their website to create uncontested divorce papers and child custody complaints and small claims court complaints. So slowly it's kind of eroding at some of the potential clients that attorneys could have. So, I mean, that's kind of bad for attorneys' business, though. I mean, it's great for the consumer, but it means that, fewer and fewer people are going to be desperately seeking an attorney for these simple things.
Yes.
Yeah. But for what you do, but for auto accidents, though, I definitely see that there is a need still for attorneys to do personal injury and try to get the best settlement for
Yes. And I often tell people that often the best advice I can give you is that you do not need an attorney for your auto accident. If it's a simple case, I always say, I think you can handle this on your own. It's, you just went to the ER, very low impact. And I give advice and I send them on their way and say, give me a call back if you have any questions. And they will. But I do that because, again, I try to be honest with people as much as I can. Not, I'm not going to tell them they need an attorney just to get their business when they don't. But people remember that as well. I've had people who remember me a year or two later, or even way beyond that, and they call me or they refer me to their friend or family member just by me spending that time giving them that advice. So, so I don't take them all.
Yeah, that's right. You always want to leave a good impression and people will talk and hopefully refer more people to you down the road. Yeah. So hi, Serena. Thanks for being here. He says, welcome back to you. Or she says, welcome back. What is a district court? What jurisdiction does it have? And how does it relate to the DA's office in a county?
Very good question. So in many counties, well, I'm just going to talk about North Carolina. You have, for criminal cases, you have what is called district court. And that is for the lower level cases, misdemeanors typically. And even felonies will go through district court for maybe the first appearance. So if someone is charged with murder, for an example, he or she may see a judge in district court. Again, district court is primarily for misdemeanors, DWIs, larcenies, and low-level crimes. But even for felonies, they will go before they will often go before a district court judge to set the bond and to advise the defendant on his or her rights to an attorney. Now, superior court is typically reserved for felonies in the criminal world. Again, rape, murders, those type of cases will typically be tried in superior court. In terms of the DA's office, the DA's office in the criminal world, they oversee or they represent the people of North Carolina against all defendants in district court and superior court.
Yeah. So, so what are some, I don't know if you know this, but what are some of the crimes that would end up in federal court though? Would that be something like, I don't know, like organized crime or things that happen across state lines or things like federal law? If
the FBI is arresting you, you are in federal court. So any federal crimes, the federal court system also has statutes like crimes, just like we do in North Carolina. You look at a crime and it's broken down by the elements. You have the same type of statutes in the felony in federal court. So if the FBI is after you or any type of U.S. Marshals, you are going to be in the federal court system.
Okay, thanks for that primer there. Yeah, and also family court is part of district court too, and some say like credit collection cases, those typically are brought in district court. So it's the bigger cases that go up a level to superior court.
Right.
So, but that's just in North Carolina. In every state, they have different names. Like in Virginia, they call them circuit courts. And, I've kind of forgotten about Virginia law by now, but I remember they use different names for the courts. So, okay. So what are some other practice areas? Because I know when you worked for Hardison Wood, didn't you do some something to do with like prisoners cases or wrongful arrest type cases, civil rights cases?
Yes, we did prison misconduct cases. So if an inmate was somehow mistreated, and it has to be egregious, not just you can't have this for dinner. I mean, it has to be egregious type of behavior from the Department of Corrections. Typically, it involves an inmate where he or she needed medication, and the prison knew about the medication. It was medication that, if he or she did not take it, could cause life-threatening injuries or death. That was a common scenario that we had. Also, when someone is arrested and he or she is suicidal, they should know that. Often they should know that. I mean, they can't predict everybody, but if they should have known it in advance based on the facts of the arrest, and that person did in fact commit suicide, the family will also typically bring a claim against that particular jail. We would do if abuse, if the arrest was abusive in any nature, we would do that as well. And we would do like torts, if, like negligence cases. In fact, a common scenario would be like a branch falling from a tree and breaking somebody's neck or their back. That happens all the time in jail, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, just because they do not maintain the yard like they should.
Yeah.
And so you would have like branches falling from trees or any type of. I had an inmate who actually walked into a manhole that was open, and he broke his leg and injured his back pretty badly. Mm-hmm. Those type of cases.
Yeah, that's a very niche area of practice, but somehow you guys made it profitable, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work because the state would typically never just settle the case. I mean, you have to go through a lot of discovery before you will get an offer. So it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of traveling. I would love deposing the wardens. That was like, to me, the funnest thing ever.
Really? Why? Why was it so fun?
Because, they have so much power over all of the inmates. Mm-hmm. So when I would go there, I felt like I was turning the power over to myself.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. So you had to travel to handle these different cases. Mm-hmm. But in terms of lawyer jobs, though, like how do you think you got that job at that firm? I bet there were a lot of people who applied for the job opening that you got there.
Yeah, that was a great experience. I really enjoyed working there. I went to a job fair in law school. It was at the Bar Association in Cary. Mm-hmm. And I was the last one to interview, because when you sign in, you could see who came before you. And I was like, okay, I'm the last one, Mm-hmm. And but I just went in there and I was myself, and I told them that I was very interested in civil work, and they actually knew you, believe it or not. They saw that on my resume. Yeah.
I don't even know him that well, but hey, if it kind of brought in a connection between you and the interviewer, then so be it.
It was helpful. Yes. Yeah. He was like, yeah, I know Judy. So he had met you, I guess, before, but that was helpful.
NCHA. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was helpful. But, I was myself. Like, I always try to be myself when I go to an interview. And one thing I always keep in mind when I used to interview is it goes both ways. So I want to ask the potential employer questions because I want to be happy in my job. So I don't just want to get hired. I want to also make sure that opportunity is right for me. So I would go into any job and, I would ask them questions as well as if I was interviewing them, because I wanted them to know that this is important to me. So
yeah. Well, I mean, how many interviews did you have to go through? Because there's one at the bar center, and then did you have to come back for another interview at the office or anything?
With Hardison, I went through 3, I believe.
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, 3, because he was trying to narrow it down between me and I know at least one other person who was actually in law school with me at the time, Josh. And Josh he works for the IRS.
Oh, okay. So he has an interesting, good job then.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
he's the guy who comes after you when you don't do right by your taxes.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. So you got this job, and so what were the other types of law that you also did at that firm? Personal injury and workers'
Yeah,
comp.
and I did criminal as well there,
Oh.
mostly personal injury. I was not doing workers' comp when I was there. Eventually, he brought on Adam Smith, who he is board certified in workers' comp, but I never really got the opportunity to do workers' comp there. Mostly personal injury. We would do like negligent repair work when an auto shop would mess somebody's car up, and I really dislike doing that work because people get so attached to their vehicles and it's always personal. It's not really based on the facts or reality.
Yeah.
It's my baby. It's my car,
That is not a baby. It's a vehicle. Yeah.
But even doing personal injury, when somebody's car is total or damaged, I always remind people of that. It's only a car.
Yeah.
You can replace it.
Yeah. And also you have to look at what is the fair market value of
Right.
that vehicle. Nobody cares that it had sentimental value because your mom used to drive it or whatever. So yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So then after that, then what other types of law did you do? So you mentioned workers' comp.
Yeah. So back in 2012, so I started my practice in 2011, and I was at the time doing personal injury and criminal defense. But I brought in a case where my client, he was injured on the job, but he was injured by a third party. So I was like, hey, I know personal injury, but he also has a workers' compensation claim. So from there, I was like, I need to learn because the worlds really merge together a lot in these cases. Often you have people on the job who are injured by a third party. It happens a lot with auto accidents, especially. So I said to myself, I'm going to take his workers' comp claim. And from there, I just reached out to people who I knew who handled workers' comp, and I really learned from them. And I did a lot of reading. And I just took that case, and now I consider myself to be very good at workers' comp. I stay busy doing that.
Yeah.
Yes. Workers' comp is a completely different world from personal injury. One thing I always tell my clients in the comp world is, number one, this is from the first conversation, because it's very hard to believe this, but you are not entitled to pain and suffering and emotional distress in workers' comp. So I like to say that right away, because often my client, they may have lost a body part, a limb from a machine or whatever it may be. So you have to tell them that very early and throughout the process.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you have to give some bad news, and like I remember from doing workers' comp a long time ago that it's basically based on the person's average weekly wage, and there's a statute that also tells you how many weeks of your average weekly wage you get if you lost a finger or you lost a foot or your arm or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I like to educate my clients on that right away, because the more they know upfront, the better it is long term. And I'll even take them to the Industrial Commission's website and walk them through it very early. And I would tell them, you may not remember this, but I want to talk to you about it, because you need to know how your case is going to play out most likely. Because, sometimes, it's very hard for them to realize, my hand, why isn't my hand as viable as my back? It's still my hand. But there has to be a mechanism to determine how to dispose of these cases. And that's what they came up with. So we have to work around that.
Yes. Yeah. And for the people out there that probably don't know much about workers' comp, it's like a totally separate area of law when employees get hurt on the job. And so there are all these laws, state specific, obviously, that deal with, how does the person get compensated? And, the workers' comp insurance carrier is supposed to pay for their medical care and let them get a second opinion. But there are always battles between the insurer and the the injured employee, because they want to save money. So sometimes there are conflicts about whether the person really needs surgery or should they really have this kind of medical procedure done. And, are they ready to go back to work or not? So that's where a lot of people end up hiring attorneys to represent them.
Yes. And, and often the more educated the client is, the less value the case may have because they are more likely to find suitable employment. So I even go through that process with my clients. You have an education, unlike some of my blue collar construction worker cases. I mean, that's all they know is doing construction. So they may not be able to find a job once they are done with medical care. Compared to you have all this experience. Also, where you live at makes a difference. Wake County compared to, I'm from Halifax, where you don't have many jobs out there compared to Wake, and many of them are blue collar jobs. And typically that's all that person will know. So, how do they find suitable employment when they don't have any education, they don't have any other experience other than doing blue collar work? And that adds value to the case, actually, when they cannot find suitable employment.
Yeah. I remember all these issues with incompetent voc rehab people that were assigned to my clients' cases. And so what kind of person would be well suited to doing workers' comp cases then, for those who might be interested in this as a practice area?
Honestly, I always tell my attorney friends, you should learn workers' comp. It's especially when you do personal injury. So I think anyone who is doing personal injury, you should at least take on one case, workers' comp case, and see if you like it, because again, the two worlds merge together a lot. Workers' comp is not the Perry Mason sexy law that, you in court and people look at you as this high profile attorney. You don't get that in workers' comp, even personal injury, unless you have commercials on TV, which I don't. So you're not going to get that, feeling as if you are, oftentimes I'm like, am I an attorney? Because I never go to court much anymore, right?
Oh, but that's kind of a luxury. That's good though, because it is stressful having to go to court nonstop multiple times a week, even if it's not every day.
Yeah, but I think I think it's well suited for someone who is, that isn't important to them, that they want a good quality of life. Because for me, again, not going to court as much, that really helped me with my quality of life. I get to work out. I get to do my own yard work. I get to coach my son's baseball team. I get to go and see my daughter dance and so forth. And when I did a lot of criminal work, I really could not do that. I mean, there was no way I could coach my son's baseball team because I was in court so much. So I think it's well suited for a person who's looking for just more time to do things they enjoy in life.
Yeah, that's true. But every once in a while, you do have a workers' comp hearing or some motions hearing or trial even for
I do.
injury cases.
I do, but it's not often. It's not often, and many of them are done through WebEx or through telephone.
Yeah, good. Yeah, because I'm thinking about in terms of family law too. I think that's pretty true also. It's not all the time that I have to go to court either. Even if we already filed a lawsuit or my client's been sued or whatever, it's kind of a slow process and you're trying to get together all the financial information and trying to settle at the same time. So, a lot of cases do settle either through mediation or the day right before a hearing is scheduled. So you're right. I mean, sometimes it does seem like we're pushing paper and sitting at our computers a lot and just, typing out emails back and forth and looking at stuff. So.
Lots of emails, lots of talking to adjusters. I mean, I spend more time trying to reach insurance companies than anything else, I think, talking to adjusters but I enjoy it because, again, it gives me that quality of life that I'm looking for.
Yeah. And if anybody is interested in, say, workers' compensation cases, I mean, the funny thing is that I had no idea what workers' comp was for the longest time because usually law schools don't even teach workers' compensation law. It's kind of seen as more like for lower income people, or, like you said, it's not the fun, flashy type of area of law that people think about. But I think one of the main ways I learned about workers' comp was just going through continuing legal ed classes. Like there used to be a 2-day boot camp offered by the NCCU, which is the trial lawyers group in our state. So for anyone out there that's wondering, well, how the heck do you even learn how to practice? Really, you just have to seek out your state specific or local county bar associations continuing legal ed classes. And that's how you learn, in addition to maybe co-counseling with other people or working for a firm that already does that type of law.
That's exactly what I did. I went to the NCCU because the NCCU, everything from them is very practical. So I took CLEs with the NCCU. I brought in that case I mentioned, and I just, I did not co-counsel, but I reached out to my attorney friends who practice in workers' comp. And I would tell the adjuster, I never forget, because I try to be honest and direct, and I told her, this is my very first workers' comp case. But every time I hang up the phone with you, I'm calling my attorney friend who does workers' comp, and I'm verifying whatever you tell me. And she started laughing. And she was like, I promise you, I'm telling you everything that is correct. And I was like, okay, I'm warning you, I'm hanging up the phone. And I've worked with her so many times after that. And she remembered me telling her that.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah. Because like you said, don't burn any bridges, because you never know, you could wind up having to deal with certain people through the system for years to come until somebody retires or quits their job or whatever. So
yes, she eventually quit, or retired, I should say. She was older, but I worked with her in maybe 20 plus cases over a 10-year span.
Oh, yeah, that's a long time. Wow. Okay. Well, Serena's other question is, do you get more workers' comp or personal injury cases? Do you, or are you allowed to take cases that have already begun, but their attorneys can no longer continue?
Yeah, I get way more personal injury cases than workers' comp cases. Typically, it's about 80% more, 80-20, personal injury versus workers' comp. And yes, I can bring in cases that the other attorney no longer wants, but honestly, I'm human, and by nature, very skeptical of why that attorney doesn't want the case. So whenever someone comes to me and they say, well, my attorney no longer wants to represent me, I always ask why. Tell me why. And because again, I try to be honest and direct. If it's something that your attorney told you that I may have the same opinion, I'm going to give you that same opinion about maybe the value of your case or the likelihood of succeeding in your case. I'll give you my honest opinion about your case. It doesn't mean I will take it, but yes, I can bring it on if I decide to.
Yeah. And sometimes the more you talk to someone, you're like, oh, so you didn't really tell me this other fact about your case, hoping that I would take it on. See that happen sometimes in some other types of civil cases. Yeah.
Yes. And I've had that to happen. I'm like, man, I should have known better. Because again, we are human, even though we are attorneys, we are human. So, is it the personality of the client? Because I try to read that too. I've told people many, many times now that, maybe I'm not right for you and maybe you should seek counsel elsewhere. Especially potential clients before they retain me. I try to read people's personalities because again, I don't want anything that is going to be on Google, like a bad Google review or a bar complaint. But yeah, I try to give that potential client who is with another attorney my honest opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So any other practice areas? Oops, sorry, I hit my microphone. Any other practice areas that you're familiar with that you want to give your opinion about?
Let me see. That is pretty much it. I try to keep it simple. It's my philosophy, and that is pretty much all I've done. Well, actually, no. I used to represent students in the when they would get in trouble at like NC State or a local university. I did a few of those cases. I did maybe like 20 or 30 of those cases. but it's been a while since I've done those.
So what's that, like an academic hearing, like some sort of hearing in front of a board that decides whether to kick out a student?
Exactly. So, so oftentimes that student was charged with a crime that the university found out about, and that's how I would get involved. I would represent that student in court, but then he or she would tell me, my university is trying to suspend me. Can you help me? So I kind of got into that as well. Oftentimes I was dealing with the parents more than a student.
Yeah.
Unrealistic parents.
Oh.
Yeah, because the university has a different standard compared to, in the court is beyond a reasonable doubt, but you don't have that same standard when it comes to the university. So you could be found not guilty in criminal court, but still be suspended by the university.
Yeah, because they still have the right to boot out whoever they don't want, or they don't think that your behavior is, meets their code or whatever their rules are. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I did those cases as well. Those are not criminal or civil cases, but, often that student needed representation before the judicial board. In fact, when I was at NC State, my freshman year, I was a student on the judicial board. So I was a student who would hear the cases. And I would decide whether or not to, suspend or whatever the outcome is going to be with that student. So I did that for one semester at NC State.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, to hear about what so-called alleged bad things people did that warrant possibly getting suspended or booted out of the college. Probably like drug offenses, you think, or
mostly drug and alcohol offenses, mostly. You had some assault cases as well. Students get drunk and they fight.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. So would you still do those types of cases, or did you kind of decide you don't want to deal with that anymore?
Yeah, I would. When I used to do criminal, oftentimes that student would ask me, can I help them before the judicial board? And really, since I stopped doing criminal, I really haven't had any since, like 2017, because they kind of went along with the criminal cases typically. But yeah, I enjoyed doing them. I really thought I was helping the student because, honestly, often without an attorney, the outcome would have been way more harsh for that student.
Yeah, I see. So Wanda is a former attorney who now teaches 7th grade. And she says, parents are so litigious today, ready to turn every little discipline issue into a federal case. Is
Very true.
Is that your experience? Yeah. But you've handled some cases for parents whose kids got hurt at school, right? Or assaulted at school.
Yes, but those were severe cases, not like,
It
the
wasn't
minor
like,
things.
oh, my kid got yelled at or had to sit out of recess or something.
Yeah, because, I try to look at things, and she's right. Wanda is right. I've had parents to call me about things. I'm like, you don't need an attorney. You just need to work it out with the teacher or the principal. The cases that I took were very egregious cases, and I still take those cases, by the way. Students being assaulted, sexually assaulted, molested at school on a school bus, a student being badly beaten up by another student because of poor supervision, those types of cases.
I see. Yeah. Well, that's great that you're able to take those cases, because I don't think I know of many other attorneys that do that. So Jose says, with Zoom X or WebEx, are you able to practice out of state or out of the country if you wanted to, or do you still need to be in the area if you practice, if you have a good client base? Thank you. I would say in general, you should still actually be in the area, because you never know. There's no guarantee that the hearings are all going to be by WebEx, at least in state court. They're starting to make people come back.
Exactly. Now, I take injury cases all throughout the state, but I do not do any out-of-state cases. I don't mind. I've had cases in Cherokee and like the Outer Banks. So I don't mind taking cases throughout the state if it's worth my time, but I don't do any out-of-state cases.
Yeah. Even when I was when I was still licensed in Virginia, I think I only had like 1 or 2 cases where it was a personal connection, like someone that was sort of friends with a relative who really wanted me to help him out because I could speak Chinese. So he was willing to pay me for my driving time too, to drive up to Virginia to help him out with this lawsuit. But in general, most of the time, the attorneys do stay put and practice more where they are geographically located. And I would probably be afraid to go out of the country because, like I said, there are plenty of hearings and things that are still going to be set for in person. So if you happen to be working out of the country thinking that you can do it remotely, well, too bad. You'll have to fly back, or else you find another attorney to substitute for you if you're not physically able to be there in court. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So just to touch on a few other legal jobs other than big law, because one of my videos was with Jamie Paulin, who talked about all the jobs she's had since she graduated from law school. And that got a lot of views too. So if you don't get big law, or you're not interested in working for a humongous international law firm, one of the jobs I wanted to mention was to be a career clerk for a judge, because there are some judges, especially federal court judges, or I think state Supreme Court judges, that may hire people to be their clerks, not just for 1 year, but as a regular job with no specific end date. And I think those types of jobs are good for people who don't really want to litigate and deal with client contact. But if you're really good at legal research and writing, then that would be the best job for you. Right. Do you know anyone who has worked as a clerk or does these?
Yeah. Not as a career job, but after law school for a year or two, I know people who did that. And another good job is the DMV needs an attorney or attorneys. So many state agencies, they need attorneys on staff. So I know a good friend of mine, she's an attorney for the DMV. So that's another good opportunities out there as well. Most state agencies need an attorney on staff.
Oh, sure. And also school boards. Yeah. Because like, the local school board has their team of attorneys also. There are insurance companies that hire attorneys to work within the insurance company, banks also. So, and I guess our general advice for people looking for legal jobs is to just cast your net wide and, don't burn any bridges. Try to put off a really good impression, research your employer before you go in for your interview. I always mention this now because I think this is why I didn't get a job at the last place that I interviewed at. Was I think I came down as too depressed and negative about my current job. I was too honest, during
that will do it.
Yeah. I was like mentioning to the partner of the law firm, why I was not happy at my current job, and probably dished a little too much with him. And so ultimately he gave the job to some woman that had less experience than I did and went to a much lower ranked law school. And I was like, darn it, why couldn't I get that job? And he told me he had already gotten over 120 resumes at that point, and the resumes were still coming in for that job with a small to medium sized law firm. So anyway, let that be a warning to you guys out there that if you interview, even if you really dislike your current place of employment, just kind of put a positive spin on it and don't spend too much time, going on and on about your unhappiness with your current job, and keep it upbeat and like you're a team player, and hopefully you'll be able to get the job right.
That's very important because number one, that new employer may know the other attorney. I mean, it's a small legal world. But even, again, we are human and no one likes to deal with negative people, and just in general, it's like, so I do agree with that.
Yeah. Well, were there any legal jobs that you interviewed for that you didn't get and you were surprised by not getting the job?
Out of law school, I also applied for another PI, a personal injury job. And it was down to me and this other attorney. She got it over me. Honestly, I never asked she was well qualified, and I mean, she was. I mean, I met her in law school and she seemed very nice. So I just figured she did a better job in the interview. You know, but by then Hardison had offered me the job, but I had other job offers too, from another injury attorney, a law firm out of law school. But I really enjoyed working with Hardison. So I went there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And what about you? Do you think you'll be hiring anybody anytime soon?
Honestly, no, because again, the stress. You know, I have my job down to a point where I could work from home once or twice a week. I go to my office maybe 3 days a week, but I like the way I have it set up now, right? And I have people asking me all the time, you know, are you hiring? You know, will you hire me? I'm like, you know, I make good money already without the need to bring somebody else in, and that's just more stress, more managing, those type of things. So I'm not the person who needs to have this big office with all these attorneys. I mean, I think it's great for those who want that, but it's just not me.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm very happy being a solo practitioner. You know, it definitely decreases the stress in my life, not having to run things by a law partner or other attorneys to supervise, or even more legal assistants to supervise.
Exactly. I have a legal assistant, and that is it. And so when I need to co-counsel, I do. I mean, some cases I need co-counsel, and I do that, you know, so I know when to do that. And that's my way of working with somebody else.
Yeah, that's good. So does Stacy still work with you?
No, I have Daphne now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because sometimes I tell people like, oh yeah, his assistant's name is Stacy. So I didn't realize that she no longer works
Yeah,
for you.
so she left last year because of COVID. She just wanted to be home with her son. So
Yeah.
she's been at home, from my understanding, since March of 21.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad you found somebody else that's hopefully good and competent too, because she was really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, it's already past an hour now, and I see there are no further questions unless anyone has a really quick question that you want to throw in the chat box now. But I really thank you so much. You know, you've spent so much time showing up for multiple live stream shows, and I'm always
I love
looking
it.
for more guests, you know, because I think it definitely makes it more interesting to have more perspectives on, you know, what life is like as a lawyer, what it's like going to, you know, coming out of a different law school, like a more regional law school, and doing different types of, you know, practice areas. So, so why don't you hang on here and we'll say goodbye to our viewers then. So,
Thank you.
yeah, we'll see when the next live stream is. I have a lot going on the next couple of weeks, but hopefully we'll have another live stream in about a week and a half. So thank you guys for being here.